Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first ever flight on my YouTube channel. So, for Flying Kayak's inaugural flight, we're going to be taking off from Munich airport and flying to Amsterdam on Vatsen. Although we do have a KLM call sign, the 737-700 Ultimate doesn't provide a KLM livery by default, so we'll be using a TUI livery instead. The airplane for today, as I already mentioned, is the 737-700 by Ultimate. It's a freeware 737 provided for X-Plane 11, and it is a very accurate rendition of the 737. I'm sure I can show you that throughout today's flight. The 737-700 is a small, mid-range jet that is perfect for routes like Munich to Amsterdam. I'm going to be talking about the aircraft type, about the route, and maybe even about the airline as we are in flight. Alright, so let's hop aboard. Okay, welcome to the flight deck. I'm just going to get myself loaded up with passengers and fuel here, and I'll be right back with you in a second. And welcome back to the flight deck. Alright, I've just loaded up the passengers and set up all of my ground services. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to prepare the airplane for the flight. So now I'm ready for pushback.
Bodenanbrücke. Der Schlepper bringt sich in Position.
Alright, so in order to start the engines, we'll have to do that manually on the 737. So we're going to turn off both pack switches, turn the isolation valve switch to auto, verify we got enough duct pressure to start the engines, and wait for the push cart.
Bodenanbrücke. Alle Türen und Luken sind verschlossen. Wir sind bereit, den Schlepper zu verbinden.
Alright, so while the pushback is starting, in just a sec, I'm going to return to the cockpit so that I can start the engines once we're clear to do so.
Schlepper ist verbunden. Der Bypasspin ist gesetzt. Bitte lösen Sie die Parkbremse.
Alright.
Wir beginnen mit dem Pushback. Die Triebwerke sind frei zum Anlassen.
Clear to start the engines. So right engine start switch. Gonna go to ground. And now, look down here and wait for this N2 reading to increase above 20%, at which point we're going to start injecting fuel in the engine with this little cutoff lever here. 13, 14. Almost there. And engine started. You can see the engine's got a good start here. We're just going to wait for that start. So let's switch to return to the auto setting. And off we go. And it's in the auto settings, so we're going to return it to continuous, and we're going to start this second engine.
Der Push-Vorgang ist abgeschlossen. Bitte setzen Sie die Parkbremse.
Alright.
Schlepper wird getrennt. Einen kleinen Moment bitte.
Alright, so currently I'm just terminating the pushback and getting ready for taxi.
Der Schlepper wurde entfernt, der Bypasspin ist gezogen. Freizeichen gibt's von der linken Seite. Einen angenehmen Flug. Tschüss.
Alright, so now we've pushed back from the gate and configured our airplane ready for taxi. Today we're going to fly from Munich to Amsterdam, which will be an approximately 1.5 hour flight, depending on the traffic, the winds, and what air traffic control is going to give us in terms of runway. The next thing we're going to do is taxiing the airplane, which means we're going to move it on the ground all the way to the runway. At that time, we're going to perform a 2 taxi checks, and I'll be right back with you with more information on the flight and our route and our airplane for today once we're ready for departure. Alright, so Munich is actually not a very small airport. In fact, Munich is the second largest airport in Germany, and it's a hub for several airlines, including Lufthansa, and therefore we can expect quite a bit of a taxi. During the taxi, I'm going to have to do a few checks. Most importantly, I'm going to be turning on the taxi and runway turn-off lights. I'll be setting my flaps to the takeoff flaps position, and I'll check my flight controls in just a second. Munich Airport is split into 2 parts. You've got the aprons, which are the places where airplanes park and taxi to the terminal, and you've got the taxiways, which are those taxi routes that are directly adjacent to the departure runway. So what we're doing right now is taxiing out of the apron, which we'll be leaving right here, and onto the taxiways. The aprons are controlled by apron control, and the taxiways are controlled by ground. Those are 2 air traffic controllers that will tell you exactly where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do whilst you're steering your airplane through Munich Airport. Although we're flying online on VATSIM, currently there is no air traffic control online, so sadly we won't get much service. Once we reach the Amsterdam area, however, we will have online air traffic control, at least that's what it looks like for the moment, and we can expect to see some traffic. Until then, it's just gonna be us in the friendly skies. The Boeing 737 is a fairly common series of airliner. In fact, the 737 is the most produced jet airliner in history. The current version of the 737, the 737NG, is being succeeded by the 737 MAX. The 737-700 that we're flying right now is the smaller brother to the 737-800. It's configured to carry a few less passengers, and in general that means that she's used on routes where there's less demand, or where, well, airplanes like the 737-800 would just be too big to go into, as being smaller carries several advantages, like the ability to land at airports with shorter runways, more remote airports, or places that lie out of the range of the larger brethren. As the 737-800 is smaller and lighter, she also uses up less fuel, so she can fly for a longer distance on a single tank. In general, however, the 737-800 and the 700 are very, very similar. In fact, they're so much alike that you don't even need separate licenses to fly both of the airplanes. This simulator rendition of the 737-700, the 700 Ultimate, is a freeware add-on for X-Plane 11. However, as I've shown you in the procedures already, she goes into a great level of accuracy. In fact, this is perhaps the most accurate 737 rendition that I've ever seen in any simulator, excluding maybe the PMDG 737 for FSX. However, I don't really have any experience with that. Regardless of its accuracy, this airplane is a very fun little one to fly around, and she's fairly easy to learn. In general, the 737 is an incredibly cool airplane if you want to check out a modern airliner that is equipped with all the bells and whistles that you'd expect from any modern aircraft and is capable of flying high and fast. You've come to the right place. I'm going to put a link in my description that will lead you on your way to finding the 737 download link, and you can be sure that there's going to be a lot of updates released which will further improve on this plane's level of simulation depth and on this airplane's fidelity. I've been using the 737-900 by Ultimate and the 737 Zibo mod, which is a 737-800 version, for quite a while now, and I've always had a great experience with lots of bugs being addressed with each update, new features constantly being added, and in general an incredibly cool simulation being provided for no money, or if you choose to do so, a small donation. I'm pretty sure that there's a ton of work that goes into this airplane and airplanes like it, and I'm pretty sure that it's pretty incredible what the people who programmed this have managed. Alright, so we're almost at the end of the runway. Before we can taxi onto the runway and we're ready for takeoff, we've got a few more things to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn over and hold short of the runway, and then we're just going to start configuring the airplane for takeoff. Alright, so even though we're fairly light today, not carrying a full load of passengers or fuel or cargo for that matter, I've still opted to use the entire runway because, well, there's nothing as useless as the runway behind you should there ever be any sort of emergency or issue on takeoff. In general, airplanes are really safe, and the 737 has an excellent safety record for an airplane that's used as much as she is. In fact, most likely, of course, nothing is going to happen during takeoff or any other phase of flight. However, better safe than sorry. So that's why we're going to be using the entire runway for today. Munich has about 4,000 meters, or 4 kilometers, which should approximate around 13,000 feet of runway, which is a lot of runway, which means that you shouldn't have any issues in terms of runway length with any airplane, especially with a Boeing 737 when it's not as fully loaded. A 737 could take off comfortably in half that runway length, so there's not going to be a lot of issues today. Before we can start with the takeoff, I'm just going to quickly check the flight controls. So I'm going to move them to their extreme positions: full left, full right, full up, full down. I'm going to check the rudder and see if they follow my commands correctly and to the full positions. Alright,